Welcome to a special edition of the Orange Cactus Coffee Podcast, where coffee professional Scott Rao answers your questions. It's yes or no with Scott Rao.
Thanks, Brioni, and thank you for joining us for episode 81 of the Orange Cactus Coffee Podcast, where, yes, indeed, we've got him back again, Scott Rao, to answer more of your questions. So grateful to have him on answering these questions for you, for me, for the world. So, hope you enjoy them. Let's go ahead and jump right in to this week's question.
Andre asks, I'm curious about your strategies for waste reduction when dialing in batch brews, especially for those who change coffees frequently. Do you pour out bad extractions and lose a lot of coffee? Do you have creative ideas about how to use it for other purposes? Since compared to one bad single brew, one imperfect batch will potentially disappoint many customers. Does that tighten your range of acceptability for serving the batch brew?
I don't find I've ever had much waste with batch brews, except when there's a lull in service and I have had to pour some coffee down the drain because it wasn't fresh enough anymore. I remember when I opened my first shop in 1994, during the first year, we probably threw out more than half of the coffee we brewed because we were very concerned about making sure every customer always had a fresh cup of coffee. To me, the number one reason cafes are constantly dialing in brews is that they're using irrational settings and never getting it quite right. The best grind and program settings for a batch brew are actually quite simple. Even if your grind setting is one small notch off, the very long contact time and minimal astringency of a well-made batch brew mean you have more, not less, leeway with settings when batch brewing versus hand pouring. It's true that one batch brew will create more bad coffees than one pour-over will, but I don't think that's the way to look at it. The question is really, what percentage of each type of brew will be bad? That's the only fair comparison. Batch brewing is far more consistent than hand pours. Therefore, over the course of, say, 1,000 cups brewed, the number of acceptable cups from the batch brew will be higher, not lower, than the number of good hand pours. Not to mention that the average cup of batch brew tastes better than the average cup of hand pour to begin with. Thanks for the question.
So, when we submitted this question, Mike, about pour out bad extractions, creative ideas, how to use it for other purposes. And, one imperfect batch will potentially disappoint many customers. For me, when I thought the waste when dialing in the batch brew, I thought it was going to be just what Scott said in the beginning, which was, it's been sitting too long, we're going to dump it. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I thought the question was going to be, though it wasn't our question. Question came from, I think, Andre. Mm-hmm. And we got to, we'll honor Andre's question. But it's something that I really hadn't even thought about. And so for me, it was kind of like, that's interesting. The question I thought was interesting. And then I thought Scott's answer was very good. Just about the percentages. Because even when my limited mind, he's like, it's about the percentages. As I was hearing it for the first time, I'm like, well, a bad pour over is 100% of the time, right? Because it was just it was one, you get one shot, one kill. The whole thing is shot. Mm-hmm. And then he's like, no, when you took a look at it compared to 1,000 cups, how many good pour overs are you going to get, or hand pours, and how many good batch brews are you going to get?
In comparison.
It's hard to argue. It's hard to argue with him because my experience has been the same. I've had hand pour experiences.
You've had poor experiences.
Yes. I've had lots of bad hand pour experiences. But batch brews are pretty much consistent, even though I would say a good hand pour for me, in my limited experience, has been better than some of the better batch brews that I've had.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I thought his perspective was very well balanced. I think there's, for me, an element that I haven't experienced amazing batch brew. Yeah. I have yet to find amazing batch brew, right? I think it's probably just an indicator of the underlying problem of preparing good coffee, period. Yeah. Understanding the principles and how to, make it good with batch brew or with pour over. But I do like the fact that he says really the most waste comes from making too much.
Yeah.
Or in his case, in the example, having such a desire for quality that you probably err on the side of caution and dump more coffee than you need to.
Yeah.
Dialing in, as he said, shouldn't be a problem once you understand kind of your grind setting. I think he even says it's a little more forgiving.
There's a little more leeway there between a batch brew and a hand pour.
Yeah.
It's more forgiving. It's easier to kind of get a good cup. It's something decent.
So once you get the parameters kind of within the ballpark, there shouldn't be much waste for dialing in.
Yeah.
Is essentially what he's saying with a good batch brew. Now, very limited, and we kind of trust his perspective on that. I don't know if that has a lot to do with the batch brew system you're using.
Right.
Maybe there are certain ones that allow you that liberty or give you that freedom because they're just that consistent and good.
And I know Scott has talked about shower heads kind of on his blog, so that'd be a good resource if you're not familiar with Scott's blog to check it out. But he does talk about different shower heads from different manufacturers and how even water distribution is important to prevent, channeling and over extraction, under extraction within the bed that you can't see it because it's tucked away. You can't see it until kind of afterwards, but you can tell from the shower heads kind of how the water is going. But once you lock those things in, once you know that the water is being evenly distributed, and the time is locked in and the grind is locked in, you should be good to go.
You should be, and I think that is something to keep in mind. That if potentially you have a inconsistent brewer or a poor brewer, maybe it's not so much that you're struggling as the barista trying to dial it in. But that you're fighting your machine. Maybe its water temperature is inconsistent.
Yeah.
And so you're like, this is great. I'm going to do exactly what I did tomorrow. And you do it, and it's not good. Well, you don't realize that maybe your water temp is fluctuating. Or that, like you said, your shower head is
clogged or something.
Is erratic. Yeah. So maybe you're fighting the brewer. So I'm sure there's some element of that based on, like you said, his blog writings, and that some machines are just better than others.
And whatever machine you're using, you got to clean it and maintain it. I mean, I think that goes kind of without saying. So
you don't just let the residual oils build up, and that contributes to the flavor.
No,
so the older the machine.
That's what I've heard.
Not true.
Not true.
Yeah. So we appreciate Scott's answer. We appreciate the question.
Yeah. Thank you, Andre, for the question.
And we look forward to the next one.
And thank you, Scott, for the answer. And thank you so much for submitting questions, for listening, for hanging with us. I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you putting this in your ear. You can submit your own questions for Scott. Email them to me at jacob@orangecactuscoffee.com, or you can sling them over to Mike at orangecactuscoffee.com. You can hit us up on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We do have a Snapchat handle, but I don't use it much. I just got to be real honest with you. So anyhow, also, you can find Scott Rao at scottrao.com, and you can also check out his books. He's got the Professional Barista's Handbook. He's got Everything But Espresso. He's got the Coffee Roaster's Companion. Mike has already got that book and has been using that pretty much exclusively since the beginning. And also Espresso Extraction, Measurement and Mastery. I'll throw a link to those books in the show notes if you're interested in checking them out. I highly recommend that you do so.